The Thomas & Friends Minis has had a wide variety of different character variants over the course of its 10-year lifespan, resulting in some interesting liveries throughout the years. I've done 2 videos in this style already, and today I'll be completing the original Steam team, plus Duck, by drawing them in the liveries worn by some of their variants in the Minis range. With that, it's time that I made a start. Edward has had a handful of Minis variants over the years, although given how early on he was introduced in the range, he has had comparatively few variants versus other characters introduced around the same time. Some of these variants look quite interesting, such as the Robo design, but I decided to go with the sports variant, which gives Edward a football pattern, or a soccer ball pattern if you prefer. Given that the 2026 World Cup is still ongoing during the production of this video, it seemed fairly topical to work this variant into the video somewhere. I decided to draw Edward arriving at the Sodor airport, after having taken a bunch of football fans there to board a plane bound for North America, where the World Cup is currently taking place. After Thomas and James made fools of themselves during the events of Reds vs Blues, the Fat controller decided to put a more sensible engine in charge of the football trains, and that engine in question was Edward. For the occasion, Edward and his coaches have been painted up in a special livery. Edward is happy to have been put in charge of these trains, but between you and me, he is looking forward to when all the fuss has died down and he can go back to his regular blue colour scheme and slightly more relaxed work schedule. This is the first time I've drawn the Sodor airport, and the only other hit model era location I've drawn in a video aside from Great Waterton that one time. It's an interesting looking building, even if I sometimes wonder if the main building could have done with being a slightly toned down shade of yellow or have a bit more texture to its exterior. Ah well, at least it stands out next to Sodor's other buildings. And, with that said, here is the finished drawing. Henry has a number of variants, but for this video I decided to go with this design, the Ghost variant. This is one of those variants that feels a bit less like a new livery for the engine, and more like a whole scene or illustration for which the engine is merely a canvas, if that makes any sense at all. It's perhaps a bit more of a challenge to work this type of variant into a semi-convincing livery for an engine, but I think I've worked something out. Given that the theme is ghosts, I decided to go for a vaguely spooky theme all around for this illustration. Perhaps the idea is that around Halloween time, the Fat controller runs special trains, possibly mystery tours, during the spooky season. This time it looks as though Henry is in charge of the train, and has been kitted out to match the theme. Most notably, a luminous sheet has been draped around his front end, with holes for the funnel and headlamp of course, to resemble a ghost. I'm not sure what Henry thinks of this, and given that his face is covered by a sheet, his voice would probably be muffled anyway. I've decided to depict this scene at Marin Station. I've somehow never drawn Marin Station before. To be fair, it hardly ever shows up in the Railway series, so despite its relative ubiquity in the TV series, it's not entirely surprising. I've based my depiction of Marin on the version from season 6 onwards, rather than the straight-tracked Marin from Season 1. Although, in all fairness, the Season 6 onwards design is what Marin was supposed to look like in Season 1 before budgetary limitations got in the way. I have modified this livery slightly. For starters, I've given Henry a red buffer beam, but also I've added his running number to his tender. In its earlier years, the Minis tended to be better about retaining the engine's numbers on nameplates, which I personally felt was better for the range's overall cohesion. Not to mention it helped with knowing exactly which character you were looking at, given how distorted the body toolings typically were for the Minis range. Yes, I know you can look at the bottom of the chassis to let you know which engine's which, but that's not the point. With some of the later Minis variants, the lack of numbers or much resemblance to the original livery at all made the range feel less harmonious, and I think the designers could have still come up with inventive ways to incorporate the engine's running numbers without sacrificing the livery designs. But, with all that said and done, here is the completed drawing. For Duck, I've decided to go with something vaguely topical again. It's summertime, so I thought I'd draw the beach variant of Duck, which was exclusive to a 30-pack. For this illustration, I was inspired by a magazine story called On the Beach, where Duck loses control of his train of trucks, crashes through the buffers at a seaside station, and ends up derailed on a beach. He is initially upset, but soon starts to enjoy his time on the beach. I decided to illustrate a similar scenario for this illustration, where Duck has been beached thanks to dodgy brakes, or possibly some particularly ruthless trucks, and has to stay there until the breakdown gang are able to sort out the mess. Luckily, Duck didn't come into any physical contact with any of the beachgoers during the crash, and they are more amused than alarmed by his presence. Like with Henry, this livery isn't one-to-one with the original Minis variant. I couldn't find a way to explain the translucent blue running board or translucent orange wheels, but I've explained the flowers by having it so that some kids have decided to pick some flowers from a nearby shrub and decorate Duck with them. By the looks of things, some beachgoers have decided to use Duck to store their belongings, such as a beach towel, a beach ball and a rubber ring. I'm not sure where they got goggles and a snorkel big enough to fit Duck's face. Perhaps the person who left them there was a bit big-headed. Looking at the Minis variant again, I personally think the shade of green they used is better than the shade they used for the classic Duck, which is a much duller olive shade. I suppose they just wanted to set Duck apart from the other green engines, as the 2025 motorised Duck is a similar shade. Not to mention the 2026 reboot, which is using different shades and hues to differentiate the various blue and green engines from each other. Perhaps the regular Minis Duck would have looked better if the running board was either black or red rather than grey. Black wheels would have certainly helped as well. However, there's no point crying over spilt milk. We've just got to hope that Duck looks half decent in the upcoming reboot and the new diecast line. And so, here is the completed image. And there we are, 3 more Thomas Minis variants illustrated, complete with potential canonical justifications for their existence. It's been nice revisiting this topic once again. Browsing the wiki for different Minis variants and paint schemes can definitely be quite inspiring at times. And I think creating these illustrations has certainly been a fun and interesting experience. Hopefully it was also a fun and interesting experience watching it. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if this video has interested you and you want to see more. But that's all there is for today, so I'll see you later.